to you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Streakers Island Podcast. It is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. I am joined by the usual suspects. We have the man who's choking like the Leafs did in Game 7, Chazzy the CEO. Mr. Dan Moore for his money.
Woo!
Who, by the way, got some sunlight today. You can see the color back in those cheeks.
Well, see, I don't have my beard anymore, right? I saved it on air, so now my face can see the sun again.
And, of course, there is nobody more dashing in the history of podcasts than Lane Dashing Dashko. Even if William Nylander started the Choke Artist podcast, he would not be as dashing as Lane Dashko. You can see I'm still a little butthurt about the Leafs losing Game 7. But we're going to talk about that in I'm going to call it the WTF segment of the show. We will also go, what happened to the Jets? What happened to the Caps? And we'll just add again to all of those series. We're also going to take a deep dive into the third round of the NHL playoffs for teams who know how to win 4 out of 7 games. It's a miracle that someone figured out how to do it. The CFL preseason kicked off on Monday night. Get that kicked off? Oh, so funny. London Knights win another OHL championship. We're going to get into the NBA playoffs. We're going to go what feels like deja vu at the Toronto Blue Jays and whatever else we feel like talking about. So let's dive right into the second round of the NHL playoffs, which is what I like to call our WTF segment. We saw the Canes and Panthers from the East make it into the third round, and the Oilers and Stars. I don't know what people are surprised in the West. I think people are more surprised in the East that Toronto yet again blew another 2-0 series lead. Mm-hmm. So before we go to a clip from a friend of the program, Mr. Dashing Dashko, your dashness. How you were very riled up after Game 7.
Oh,
you were furious. Have you calmed? You seem calmer.
Well,
are you actually calmer, or are you just compartmentalizing?
Probably compartmentalizing. I'm still furious at the end of the day, but it's just so. Like I said, I keep watching videos. I've watched so many people's thoughts on it, and it's funny. You could watch the same videos from 6 years ago, and it feels like they're still talking about the series last night. And I actually was listening to someone talk about I was watching the wrong video, and I thought they were talking about this series, and it was a video from 5 years ago, but I didn't even notice it because it's the same thing every year. I was like, oh, this is the wrong series, but it's the same story, and it never ends. Like I said before, it's the Fast and Furious franchise. You know what's going to happen. It's the same cast of characters, the same result, the same disappointment, and yeah, it's getting kind of sad at this point.
Lane, when you talk about the same cast of characters, Dan Moore for your money has said multiple times he would try to find a way to force Austin Matthews out. Chazzy, on the other hand, thinks Toronto is driving out top-end talent. So another friend of the program, Mr. Peter from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, way far up north, shared his thoughts. And it seems like he's leaning more with Dashing Dashko and more for than Chazzy.
So my thoughts on the Leafs, I think major serious changes need to be made, starting with Shanahan. Shanahan's got to go, and so does the core 4. This has been going on for so many years now. It's the same year, same story, just a different series. The core 4 obviously can't get it done in the playoffs when it counts the most. They're overpaid. So I think we should talk about that between them and Shanahan. And goaltending, I think, was a little bit of an issue as well, especially in Games 5 and Game 7. Thought could have been a little tighter. But just some thoughts in a nutshell, okay? Right there.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the video. Now,
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
I am in the middle between Peter and Chazzy and Dan.
Sorry, Peter's saying the whole
This is a
core
very
four.
sexy sandwich. He's saying the whole core four is gone. Get rid of them all. Get rid of the Shanna plan. And while you're at it, go get new goalies. Brad Tree living trad. He's such a trad, bro. He's gonna need 6 cell phones with what Peter, Morfor, and Lane Dashing Dashko want done. Between moving Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander, and potentially going to get 1, if not 2 new goalies. Chazzy, you are more leaning towards these guys are high in talent. They got to figure it out eventually. I'm in the middle. Like I said, it's a very sexy sandwich we're in here. I feel the Leafs need to make some core 4 change. You can't move the whole core 4 in one off season. That's just not going to happen. Number 1. Number 2, I don't think there's enough players available to replace the whole core 4 and still be competitive. I don't think Leaf fans will accept 3-4 years of not making the playoffs. If you move the entire core, you are in a rebuild, not a retool, not a restructure, not we're just going to change the countertops and paint the cupboard doors. No, you're tearing out the whole kitchen. It's going to take time. So I'm moving on from Marner. And I'm really considering moving on from John Tavares unless he is willing to sign very cheap. And even if he signs cheap, I don't know if I'm bringing him back because I think the leadership needs a shakeup. I'm sticking with Matthews and Nylander for now because they have term. They got no move clauses. You're kind of stuck with them. And whether you like them or not, Nylander was either 3rd or 4th in points through 2 rounds of the playoffs. Florida really focused on shutting him down. So where are you guys at? Chazzy, I kind of spoke for you.
No, I just have a comment. I have a burning comment.
Well, dude,
about the media chasing them. Didn't you guys find it weird? You had Marchand, I think Maurice. I don't know if someone else made any comment about in their press conferences trying to pity party about let the media not give these guys such a hard time. How Toronto's hard to play. Like you have the team almost feel sorry that they beat you.
Literally.
Marchand, this was the 5th game 7. Marchand has eliminated the Maple Leafs.
And the Leafs have lost 8 straight elimination do or die games, 7 straight game 7s. You might say, how does that work? They lost 1 game 5 to Columbus. Everyone likes to forget about. I think a part of it is, I'm going to say it right here. I don't think Florida wants Toronto to become more playoff ready so they can keep beating them in the second round. Number 2, though, I feel Paul Maurice has a very good understanding of Toronto media because he did coach here for a year. He took an absolute terrible team and made them miss the playoffs by 1 point, and he was ran out of Toronto. So I think
and look at him now.
Coming from in that standpoint, I've also seen some people say, does Brad Marchand want to come to Toronto? And is that why he is lightly tap dancing around? We don't know if Florida's going to re-sign Marchand. So, Lane, you think there's no way Toronto brings in Brad Marchand?
I don't think he wants to come here. Like, I don't know how you're Brad Marchand and you see what's been happening here. You want to come here. Like, if I'm Brad Marchand, I look at this as just such a loser franchise at this point. And why would I want to waste my time? I want to go where players are going to give it 100%. He's seen it more than just as much as we have, that he knows these guys are never going to give it 100% when it matters. And it's almost like he's trolling them at the same.
That's
saying
what I was going to say.
It's more of a troll comment where he's kind of poking the bear and being like, the media, because he knows deep down it's like all these players, they say, oh, we don't listen to the media. We don't do this. And look how many players in the past have played for Toronto that actually had the heart and the soul. And I've seen a list a lot over the last 24 hours about how the fans are these horrible people and what they're doing and their behavior and how they're ranting and raving like me on the internet, that they're just horrible. They're horrible people. They don't deserve free cookies from Tim Hortons. But at the same time,
I want a cookie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but what you're giving these people is so beyond like pathetic. What do you expect them to do? Like, if you play a 2-1 triple overtime game, everyone's loving you. We're sitting here with a totally different
No, we're not.
It wouldn't be as bad. It wouldn't be as bad as losing 7-1 at home, where you looked like you were barely skating. You looked like you had no effort. I think it would be a little bit better. It wouldn't be as bad.
I
Honestly,
agree
for
with
me. Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
I agree with Lane 100%. I really do. I think both Brad Marchand and Paul Maurice were trolling the Maple Leafs because Maurice is probably still mad he got fired there. And Brad Marchand knows what a joke Captain Underpants is by playing against him in the World Series. So sorry, the Four Nations.
The world. Hey, Austin Matthews was a pretty good baseball player. Maybe
Well, I think he should just retire from hockey and play baseball. He could probably help the Blue Jays. That would be the best trade ever. We could trade Matthews to Toronto, and we got like, I don't know, anybody that knows how to put skates on from the Blue Jays. But anyway,
Morpher, what were your thoughts on his comment then about passengers?
oh my gosh, what a soy excuse of a captain. I mean, I'm speechless by both Marner and Matthews. Very franchise players that are getting paid, what, about 25 million of your 88 salary cap, and you're calling out your fourth liners that make 800 grand? That's a joke right there. That's why Marchand said exactly what he said. When Marchand played a bad game, when Marchand failed this year in Boston, he apologized personally to the Boston fans, and he took full responsibility for a disaster of a season this was. Matthews should have done the same thing. Marner should have done the same thing. And they just see right through it. They see how pathetic they are, and that's why we're trolling them. What was the other comment, Lane, about the fans?
Just that, like I was just saying, like I know, like they were throwing beers on the ice and jerseys while the game was happening. Saying, I think that would have happened, but I don't think it would have been as bad if you lose a 2-1, tightly played game where you played your hearts out. You showed you had so many scoring chances. Wall's making 40 saves. You got 4 breakaway opportunities you can't score. I'm saying I think it would be bad, but it wouldn't be as bad as it was losing 6-1, where it looked like the team was dead from the go. They had no effort once again. They looked flat. They looked scared. They looked like they were lost little boys out there that didn't know what they were doing for the 8th straight year in a row. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like,
Mommy. Well, that's exactly it. Sorry, that's my short-term memory loss for you, seeing it in live action. But what Lane was saying though is I've watched Toronto for the past 23 years or so, and this has been the worst loss out of all of them. I would say this loss is even worse than a Jake Gardner game, because at least with Jake Gardner, we ran him out of town. He was a joke. We all know it. But he tried his best. Same with James Weimer. He tried his best, okay? Against Boston in Game 7 in overtime, they were absolute pathetic jokes, but they tried their very best. This time, you won the division. You won home ice. You had last line change. Like them or lump them, you had the fans behind you. Not all of them were throwing jerseys on the ice. There are some people stupid enough to still support you, so you had that too. And they're still just making excuses. So I agree with Lane 1,000%. And the fact that Marner and Matthews made those comments, that's why I would get rid of them right here, right now. It's been 24 hours. I don't know why they're still here. Okay? Like, I was seriously strip the C off Matthews, bench him every game. I don't care what you have to do. Make it done so he goes off to Utah and call it a day.
Okay. I'm going to bring in a little more of a calmer presence here, somewhat. I get what you're saying about if they had lost a tight game. Honestly, I think we'd be ranting and raving just as much, saying at the end of the day, we pay over $40 million to 4 players and they scored 1 goal. Right? I remember when they lost, when they lost 2-1 to Boston last year in Game 7 in overtime.
In the first round.
Who cares? Either way, Game 7. I don't. whether it's first round or second round, to me, it's the same diff. We made a commitment on the podcast. I put on my Velcro promise ring. I don't want to flip anyone off. Insurance don't figure I put it on. But we made the promise that we said conference finals are bust of this group. It didn't matter if they lost in 6 overtimes. At the end of the day, they lost. And the way they lost is irrelevant because when you move on, you lose, you don't. It was very different, I think, but even I go to Winnipeg here just quickly. We'll talk more about the Jets later in the program. But Winnipeg fans are pissed that they went out in the second round again, with Mark Scheifele playing after his father passed away, pushing it to overtime, coming back and pushing it to game 6 with a gutsy effort in Winnipeg in game 5. I don't think fans in these markets accept mediocrity. And to bring back a little bit to what you do with these top players, none of them were good enough. William Nylander said it himself in his post-game presser. And I will say this is the difference between Nylander versus Matthews or Marner. They asked Nylander what happened. He said, I can't explain it, but we were not good enough. Morgan Riley said the exact same thing. And
Tavares took accountability. Tavares took a lot of accountability.
Yeah, at the same time, he's like, give us another chance. I don't know. I like that Tavares was bluntly that he wants to stay here. I don't know if I want him here still. I have not made that decision yet, even though I'm not the GM. But
at $5 million, do you?
Come back to me in a week. Brandon Shanahan. Brandon Shanahan's contract is done.
Oh, thank God.
I don't see the Leafs re-signing him.
No.
Well, I heard that Jonas Siegel reported today, and then what scared me, apparently the belief that Shanahan is gone is a lot harder than we think. He tweeted out today that it's not it looks like Shanahan might be able to pull some strings and stick around, which really scares me. I heard it. They said that it's not as easy as fans think it is to get rid of him.
Well, it's not. It's tough to replace your president. But his contract's up, right? So if the Leaf organization decides they want to move on from him, they just have to not sign another piece of paper.
There's $1 million question, though. It's easy to sit here and point the finger and say Shanahan's gone. Who do you replace him with? There's not that many hockey people out there that can be a president. Like, that's a lot of responsibility. And I said this to Jacob. Jacob and I were at the Argos preseason practice blue on blue game today, and we post some videos and pictures on the Streakers gaming and Streakers Island podcast social media. If you want to check that out, pretty awesome. But as I was sitting there, guess who comes on the field? Michael Pinball Clemens, wonderful man. And yeah, he's a wonderful man. But what else he's good at is winning. He has won 7 Grey Cups from player to coach to GM. And I'm sitting there and saying, Jacob, I think I figured out what to do with your Toronto Maple Leafs. You're so focused on bringing in hockey people. Forget about it. Bring in a winning culture. So I say, offer Pinball for job to be the president of Toronto Maple Leafs. Even though he knows nothing about hockey, that is A-OK, because you can have supporting staff to help him with the hockey parts, like he knows winning. So, for example, when we were watching some other podcasts on Sportsnet, they had Justin Williams on, and he's an assistant to GM of Carolina. Why is he there? Because he is Mr. Game 7. So if I was Maple Leafs, I would do something crazy. Williams, the president, knows nothing about hockey, but knows winning, and give him assistants like Justin Williams that knows the game.
I would say, okay, as much as I first started to laugh, I think you use someone like Pinball within the MLSE organization to maybe go to the Leaf organization and work with them on building culture. Because I do think that is something the Leafs are missing. There's a missing piece. It's not skill. I think it's heart and culture. And but the biggest thing when Michael Pinball Clemens became the GM in Toronto, he preached they need a winning culture. Yeah. Toronto doesn't have that. So, no, I think bringing in Michael Pinball Clemens to be the president is and it's a little insane. But to use him in more of an advisory role to maybe try to figure out what are they not doing that the Argos are. Because there's clearly, and people will say it's a 9-team versus a 32-team league. I don't care how many teams it is. At the end of the day, someone has to win and someone has to lose.
Yeah.
And Toronto keeps winning when they're the underdog. Toronto keeps losing when they're the favorite. So there's a difference here. But I do want to get more into the roster itself. The bottom 6 did not score much in this playoffs. Let's just keep it a buck. We compare it to Florida's third line. Now, Max Domi had a really good second round, as much as he took a lot of stupid penalties, and I called him out on it. He overall had a really good second round. But are you confident with the bottom 6, or do you use some of the Marner and JT money to bolster the bottom 6? That's what I do.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought the fourth line looked great, even though people are like, well, Scott Lawton, Yarn Croak, and Lorentz didn't score a goal in these playoffs. I really don't care. They did exactly what a fourth line is supposed to do. They played hard. They played physical. You even look in the first period, Nylander had the best chance where he skated around the entire team. Then it was Lawton on the breakaway. Then it was Lorentz on the breakaway. Then it was Yarn Croak on the short side. The fourth line was actually probably Toronto's best line that entire game. Yeah. I think though they need some more depth in the bottom 6.
Yes, 100%.
And that's why I say the core 4 has to change. There's never been a team in hockey in the NHL to win with paying multiple players over $10 million. Vegas is the first team in NHL history to even win a cup with paying one player over $10 million. Now,
it's too much.
This could change as of this year. We have Edmonton in the conference finals, Dallas in the conference final. Both of them have multiple players being paid over $10 million. Carolina does not, by the way. I mean, the Hurricanes are trying to show that, look, a deep depth team can still get the job done. But I don't know. And Lane, you seem to be nodding in agreement. I appreciate the nods. Nod, dude. So you're okay with, like me, you're okay losing star power to bring in depth.
Yeah, because you've seen it just so like I used this analogy before. I think there's like, there's too many cooks. I feel like for the Leafs, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And what I mean by that is
too many cooks.
What I mean by that analogy is they have too many all-stars that do the same thing, right? Like you look at Tavares. What's he all? He's offensive scoring forward. Matthews, offensive scoring forward. Mitch, high playmaking scoring forward. William Nylander, speed forward. All those guys do all the same thing. And it's not that they're bad players. See, I know these guys aren't bad players. Like I'm not like I know I was mad at them, and I still am mad at them. But at the end of the day, I know these guys aren't bad players. I think the problem is they all do the same thing. So you come into a game 7 and you have all these depth guys making $900K, but they don't have that $8 million physical forward. They do have knives, but he was hurt. I'm just saying. But you need a little bit of everything, right? You need like a Marchand who goes up there and gets a dirty goal. You need a Bennett who is kind of a rat and kind of goes up there. You need a guy like Barkov. Like you have different guys that do different things that brings in a team element that can push a game to a game 7. You have Ekblad. You have Jones. Like you have different guys that bring in different elements. When you look at the Leafs roster, how it's built all on it's still these 4 guys who all bring in offense, high octane offense. So they need to really now they can get away 2 of those guys. Now they got to say, okay, we got Matthews and we got Willie that have offense. What are the guys that we can bring in with some of these characters? Some of the guys that do a little bit different. Find these guys on free agency, put them in a position to succeed, and maybe we're singing a different tune next year.
Well, and you know what? That's a great point, Lane. And looking at the available pending free agents this year, and again, we're going to do a show where all of us, Chazzy might not do it. I don't think he wants to build a Leaf winning team in case they see a success and then Montreal can't get it done. But when we look at the top 30 pending free agents, there's a lot of players who are in that really good bottom 6 forward role. You got players like Mangiapane, Connor Brown, Riley Smith, Dandinoff, Jamie Benn, Kyle Palmieri, Ryan Donato. I think Claude Giroux will be taking a decent pay cut if he's willing to leave Ottawa. But you still have some top players like Niels Eller, Duchesne, Bennett, Kane, Bresser, and Nelson. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Toronto, although maybe the best 2 free agents are guys that could be potentially leaving Toronto. There are a lot of very good secondary options, which I think is more what Toronto needs. Now, Chazzy, I want to ask you this. In the group chat, I posted a picture that someone AI'd with Mitch Marner in a Habs jersey, right? And hearing more of Lane's point and my point and Dan's about it's not that these players are bad. The Leafs just have too many of the same style of player.
These players are bad.
Okay, well, fine. We'll take Dan out of this equation. Dan thinks Marner sucks. 102 points means he's terrible.
100%.
Do you think now? Do you see more why Toronto would be letting him go? And does this make you feel even more confident about potentially Montreal trying to bring him in?
Why Toronto wants to let Mitch Marner go?
When we talk about how they feel they have too much of the same player.
Oh no, I get that, and you can't afford him anymore.
They can't afford him. They can afford Tavares and Marner.
But you're just saying your bottom.
But then you don't have anything else again. Your bottom 6 will be a bunch of minimum league contracts that you hope can find a way to contribute.
And that hasn't worked. They've done that for 9 years. That's been the biggest thing is this bottom 6 is always interchangeable 900K guys. And every year, like it's always relied on the top guys because they make 50% of the cap. And then you're trying to mismatch all these 900K guys and hoping one of them strikes lightning in a bottle. But now, like you said, Jacob, and you said it last night, even though I was screaming my head off, but you make a good point. You're bringing out 2 guys that make $25 million. What do you do with this $25 million now that you can say, okay, why can't we make a more balanced lineup where we can have Marner run a line? Matthews run a line, Willie run a line, maybe bring Tavares $3 million, he runs a line. The fourth line, that you get a guy like, I don't know, Ehlers or something. I'm just saying you have different guys you have one guy that can run each line and good surrounding cast players, not 900 guys that can get 60 points, 50 points, 70 points. You build a more depth forward lineup. You got a great D. You got a great goalie. There is a path. Like I said, there's a path here, but they got to go down the right path. And it's going to be a busy offseason trying to figure out which highway you want to go down here and how you want to tackle it.
Now, Lane, I want to throw this to Dan here because you mentioned that the Leafs do have great goaltending. I apologize for all the popping in the background. There are people setting off fireworks like the Katy Perry on a Tuesday. Dan, Lane talks about the Leafs having really strong goaltending. You, however, felt Joseph Woll was one of the biggest reasons why this team struggled. And you're not the only one. Peter, friend of the program, in his lovely video, which, by the way, I love his spiral ceilings. I always thought they were cool. Feels the same way. So are you also using this money to maybe try to bring in like a Jake Allen or a James Reimer, or as funny as it sounds, Calvin Pickard's could be a free agent target? Like, are you looking at potentially moving Joseph Woll to bring in a more experienced backup?
100%. Woll is a joke. And I was okay with him last year. But starting about, I would say around January when he was playing, every game he allowed a deflating goal. We ended in this crazy game 7. The first period, Woll made some big saves. There was no score. Everything was fine. And then Steph Jones, out of all players, the most overrated defenseman in the league, walks into the zone. He was very moving. Walks into the zone and gives a tiny little wrist shot on net with no one in front of him, and it goes in.
That was Morgan Riley's fault.
Right there, I said a group chat to Poland.
Morgan Riley lost his
I
man.
think Stolarz has the potential to be a franchise goalie. You have him for one more year at very low pay salary. And Stolarz played very well playing just half the year, kind of like Swayman and Omar in Boston. So even if you get a good backup, I'm not saying Woll's a bad backup, but he just doesn't have the mental strength. He allows a deflating goal, and when he does allow a deflating goal, he's done. So you got to bring in like a Jake Allen, like Jacob says, or just somebody that can play about 30 games in the 82-game season that can back up Stolarz. And I don't need a Vezina winning goalie. And if you allow a deflating goal, that's okay. But keep it 1. Don't allow 5 deflating goals.
Well, and the interesting point here, and Lane, I get what you're saying, why you disagree with Dan. But I am actually going to back Dan up a little bit with some stats. And I'm going to go into Joseph Woll's game logs. This season, his stats are pretty much the same as last year. But we go into his game logs. And we go right to the beginning of the season where he starts getting action. 846 save percentage in the first game, 960 second game, 870 third game, 952 fourth game, 899 sixth game, shutout, 923, 927, 917, 899, 880, 848, 846, 920. This is the issue with Joseph Woll. This year he was very inconsistent. He was either very good or very bad.
Right.
He was the same in the playoffs when we go into these numbers here. He either would put up a shutout or he'd let in 5 goals. Yeah. And I think when you look at his numbers from 23-24 game by game, he only played in 2 games in the playoffs, but the 2 games in the playoffs he played outstanding.
He did, yeah.
And you go to his regular season numbers, they were much more consistent. You would see about 5 good games to 5 to 6, then maybe a bad game, but then he'd get back on a good run. And I think that was the big difference. Joe Woll this year to last year was very inconsistent. Yes. And I think part of it was, too, there was a lot more pressure on him this year. His last season, like last year, he was known to be the backup.
For Samsonov.
Samsonov was supposed to be the starter. And give Samsonov as much grief as you want. He could let in 4 really bad goals, but make 1 save when you desperately need it. The Grant Fuhr effect.
I actually like Samsonov.
I just hit my microphone. I am so sorry to Lane in his eardrums. But all I mean with Woll is he's a little inconsistent for me. Getting another goalie is certainly not my priority by any means necessary. It is not my priority. But if I can get James Reimer really cheap as a 3rd string, just as an insurance policy, I would do it because Matt Murray was not a good enough insurance policy. You didn't have enough confidence to put him in. If I can get a James Reimer really cheap, I don't know if I'm going for a Jake Allen. He's going to probably want 3.5 to 4. But if I can get a James Reimer for around $1 million, then yeah, I think I'd consider it. And again, you'll have that cap space by letting Marner and Tavares potentially walk. That gives you the room to have the insurance policies. But Craig, you seem to think Marner could excel in Montreal.
Yeah, I was speaking to one of the biggest Montreal fans here this afternoon, and he said Montreal would welcome a Mitchie Marner with wide open arms. And they have the cap room to do something, so we'll see.
But a question, though, as we talked about, and the players seem to be overwhelmed by Toronto media. Let's just keep it 100. Doesn't Montreal also have a pretty brutal media? Like
Mitch Marner wanted to stand it, so it's okay.
They have been all over Patrick Laine for being inconsistent and not showing up in the playoff for them. I saw so many articles about Patrick Laine. So, Chazzy, would that not concern you a little bit that he struggled in Toronto with media? Putting him to Montreal, or are you putting him in the same kind of sandstorm?
True, but it's a fresher start. He was there for what, 8-9 years?
Yeah, he was drafted.
Needs a fresh start. I think Toronto needs a fresh start. A couple of these players need a fresh start, and to turn the page and move on. I think your next chapter starts. I know you guys are calling this a retool over a rebuild.
I just feel if it's me, it's just the way I would go for Toronto would be more moving to some role players. And I think for Marner, I think he's going to want to go to a market where the media is not as intense, which is why I don't see him going to Montreal. I could see him going to Chicago because Chicago is going to pay him $14 million to give Bedard somebody to play with.
Oh my God.
Say it all you want. He would. I could see the Vegas Golden Knights going for a guy like Mitch Marner. Vegas is always looking to make a move that doesn't look mathematically possible. So if anyone does it, realistically could be the
you're going to want him in the West, not in the East.
That is one thing I will say too. I think you would rather have the Marner in the West, just because of the way it is.
What about a JT in Colorado?
I could see him going to Colorado. I could see him going to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Honestly, he is the one I could see staying in Toronto still.
But at a discount, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, $3 million would be good for Tavares. I think if he was willing to stay for $3 million, then I would I'd be way more willing. Like, if he was willing to take a third, like Jacob has said before, if he's willing to accept he's a third line forward now, he's not a second line forward, because he's still a good player, but his speed is scary. His foot speed just isn't there right now. And I don't think he can come up. I don't think he can compete a lot with these top 6 guys at the point where he can skate up and down the ice with them. They need some more speed, I think, on that second line center. But I think he'd be good enough to play on the third line center where he's playing against a little bit weaker opponents, and he can kind of his speed won't be as big as a factor. Or maybe he plays on the wing.
Now, the thing with Tavares, last time Elliot Friedman reported on what Tavares was looking at, the range was suggested a 3-year extension around $7 million a year. I don't think the Leafs bring him back at $7 million, because I think at $7 million, and I'm not saying $7 million is a bad deal for John Tavares. It's a very good deal for a guy that's put up 37 goals this year. I just think Toronto could use that $7 million to bring in a different change and to bring in some new leadership. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I know, Dan, you put in the comment section here in our little scripty scrap that you think William Nylander, you could get more out of him if you got him faster line mates.
100%. Yeah. He was the only one that really puts out the effort, I think, in Game 7 out of the Cold 4. And he was the only one that really took responsibility. And I feel like he has it. Like you think about it, he was right behind Lanton in all playoffs, leading in points for the most part until Florida set him down the last 3 games. And you look at Tavares, he keeps saying he doesn't have the speed. So imagine if you had Nylander playing with someone with the same speed. Nylander keeps getting all those breakaways. But what happens if those breakaways become 2-on-0s and 2-on-1s and someone can actually keep up with him? Right? I think it could make a huge difference.
And Nylander finished 5th in points in the playoffs of 15. Funny enough, Marner finished 6th with 13.
That's really just misleading. I'll tell you why. There's a lot of those players tied with points. So Nylander really finished 3rd because there's a bunch of people tied there. But
the playoffs isn't over yet. But
no, well, yeah, I know. But I mean, as of right now, right? The other thing I'll say, too, Jacob talked about the goalies. I would 100% get rid of Joseph Woll and bring in a backup like Whimper for $1 million. It's very just cleared up another $2 million in cap space.
2.5.
Yeah, even better, 2.5. Right?
That is a good point, because if you don't, if I more would like to see a guy like Reimer as your 3rd string potentially.
No, give Zorf wants to be a franchise goalie. Before he got injured, he was proving his point that he was a franchise goalie. So let him do it. And then if he gets injured, then you can move his money on long-term reserve. And then you can make a trade like Colorado did and get like a Mackenzie Blackwood or something until he comes back. But give it a chance. See what he does.
Or do you say screw it and call Anaheim saying, what do you want for John Gibson? And you just get a real... John Gibson is a bona fide starter in the NHL who is really desperately trying to get out of Anaheim.
Yeah.
That's not the move that I make, but it's a move I think any move is on the table. But I want to move on now to the Panthers versus the Carolina Hurricanes. The 3rd round. All respect to the Florida Panthers for getting it done in Toronto. It took 7 games, but they got it done. Dan, I love your enthusiasm. But how are we feeling in this series?
This series is a joke. This series is not even going to be competitive. I'll give Carolina 2 games. The Panthers take this in 6.
I think it's going to go 7.
I also think it's going to go 7. I think Carolina's a better team than they get credit for. Carolina, and the NHL website is not very updated. That's weird. But I think Carolina is a very strong team that can surprise a lot of people. You saw the way they completely shut down the Washington Capitals. And you know what? We start to look at the breakdown on these teams, right? You have Listerainen leads the team with 12 goals for Florida. 12 points for Florida. Seth Jarvis leads Carolina with 10. Sam Bennett leads Florida with 6 goals. Shnestakov leads the Hurricanes with 8. Listerainen leads the team in assists with 9. Sebastian Aho has 7. Frederick Anderson actually has better stats than Sergei Bobrovsky. This is the really confusing one for me. Anderson has a 1.36 goals against average and 937 save percentage and a shutout. Bobrovsky, a 2.31 goals against average, 901 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. So he takes the edge there. Carolina's got a better power play in these playoffs. Carolina's got a better penalty kill in these playoffs. Carolina is better at the faceoffs, and they are allowing almost a full goal per game less.
They're really good.
Carolina is I would say is the dark horse. We all laughed when Carolina was the odds favorite to win the Stanley Cup, but they've taken down 2 teams in 5 games each.
They've been really efficient.
They took down Washington pretty darn easily.
They did.
You got multiple players who are pluses on this team. Like, you only have one forward that's a minus player, and that's Taylor Hall. And on defense, you only have one defenseman who's a minus player, and that's Gostisbehere. So you only have 2 minus players on your entire roster.
That's pretty
after
impressive.
2 series. That's impressive. Florida is the favorite, but I don't understand it. Look at every stat. Carolina should be the favorite in this series, hands down.
I think
Carolina's the deeper team.
I agree. I think Carolina is going to really surprise some people in this series. I think the way how the Leafs, in the Leafs that the Leafs did actually do well. I think Carolina can do a lot of the same thing with blocking shots and really making a lot of games low event for the Florida Panthers. And the good thing about Carolina is they're not too worried about all this pressure. You want to talk about pressure in the media and pressure to win big games. There's none of that in Carolina. There's not going to be all these jerseys thrown and all that mass media pressure with all these Sportsnet stats thrown at them left, right, center. So their mindset, if that's the argument the Florida Panthers want to make, is going to be a way better because there's way less pressure on Carolina. And I think they're just as hungry as Florida is. They're another team they're like the Leafs, but getting to the third round. They've never gotten over that hump. And I really think this year, they've got a really good team. They got a lot of good depth. They traded Rantanen up. They got some really good players back. They got my boy, one of my favorite players. I talk about him every time on this podcast, Jacob Slavin. I think he's going to be, once again, a key player for the Carolina Hurricanes, shutting down Sam Bennett, shutting down Brad Marchand, not giving these guys room to skate around and do their fancy moves when they get room. They're not going to give – it's going to be a really tight series. I think it's going to be very low scoring, and I think that's what Carolina wants is just low scoring, tight games because I feel like they can really take advantage, and I think they could potentially upset the Florida Panthers.
I also feel for Carolina, they're not going to get pushed around the way Toronto did at times in that series. Carolina is a very physical team, and I think Carolina is built to play the same boring style the Panthers play.
Yep.
So I don't think this will be the most exciting series, but I think Carolina can win this. So right now we have Lane and myself, the good old Razor's Edge, saying that Carolina's got a shot. More for Your Money is saying that the Panthers are going to dominate this series. Don't even watch it. Just watch the Streakers Island podcast on repeat.
That's right. Yep.
Gazzy, what are your thoughts? I know you like to be quiet and soak it in. You don't have your popcorn today. Your glass of milk's hiding off to the side, so I don't call you out for being a cow.
No.
What do you see in this series?
I see this as a tight match. These two teams are evenly matched. And that's why we were talking a little bit before, game 5 or game 6, how Toronto would fare against Carolina. I think you guys were a little excited that it was Carolina to take out Washington. But like we said, Carolina's no slouch. Brendan Moore's ready for this. This is their second time, in the conference finals in the last 3 years. Yeah. They've tasted it. They know what defeat's all about. These guys are hungry, so it'll be.
So then, my question is too, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are about this. I think there's a real chip on all of Carolina's shoulders after Rantanen said, "I don't want to play here because I want to go somewhere where I can win."
100%.
Sure.
I think that really pissed off Carolina.
Yeah.
If they can get to the Cup final
after what they went through. Yeah.
After everything they went through this year, that's the biggest you to all their haters. And they're known as the bunch of jerks. They really feed off that, right? And I do agree there's not as much pressure in Carolina because you have made deep runs 2 out of the 3 years. And even the 1 year you didn't get to the conference finals, you still made it to the semifinals in the conference. They made it to the second round, which we were saying, well, that's not enough in Toronto, but that's because you haven't made it to the conference finals since 2003.
But that just tells you. So that just tells you about the front office or the coaching in Carolina.
Brendamore's such a good
and we
coach.
talked about it early when the Rangers did it early. November they traded their captain. These guys were able to keep the ship straight. Then something else happens. Rantanen leaves, Rantanen, and then you're able to. Now you're in the conference finals. It's actually
what an amazing story.
And you look at Carolina, right? This is a deep roster. I think they're a much deeper roster than people realize. And you go look at some of the players that they brought in, right? They brought in some good players. Slavin is such a good key point to bring up. As Dashing Dashko says, I think he is arguably just as good as Cale Makar. Yes, he's not as flashy, but he is a shutdown defenseman that can skate.
Yeah,
he is, Dan. If you actually got to watch the games instead of just crying that Washington's eliminated, and you'll see it. Jacob Slavin is a phenomenal defenseman. But you also look at a guy like Logan Stankoven, who was a player that you brought in desperately trying to fix the Mikko Rantanen situation. He's got 3 goals in these playoffs as a fourth liner.
And not 10.
As a fourth liner, I'll take
no
it.
Assist.
How many 2 assists, actually. Oh. How many points did Toronto get from their fourth line? And we were happy with it because they did what they needed to do.
I didn't know he had 2 assists. Sorry.
Where you look at Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake, these are 2 rookies who are actually in your bottom 6 that have made a big difference.
Right.
5 out of your 6 defensemen at least have 1 point for Carolina. That's another big one. We go to the goals from this team, and this team is able to score, right? You look at Carolina, you got Seth Jarvis with 10 points. Sebastian Aho, 10 points. Chesnikov, 10 points. Taylor Hall, another big piece from that Rantanen disaster, 6 points. Who is a third liner? So I just think this team is deeper than they're getting credit. They have multiple guys that can score. They have multiple point per game players. This is a better team than people realize.
Right.
A much better team.
One other interesting fact about this series, I think when it comes to coaching, is kind of like the Karate Kid, because Paul Maurice started his coaching career way back in the day coaching Rob Brendamore and that Carolina team that won the cup. Well, they didn't win the cup, but he started coaching way after that. And now Rob Brendamore is facing Paul Maurice as a coach. So that's a pretty cool little story.
And that is an interesting point. And I would also bring in the point, these are arguably the 2 best coaches in the NHL. Yeah. And Paul Maurice and Rob Brendamore. Yeah. Right? Rob Brendamore has been able to take the land of misfit toys and turn them into a dominant team. Yeah. Paul Maurice has taken a bunch of players everyone said wasn't skilled enough and has just made them hit you so hard that you're too banged up to play hockey by the time the series is done.
Right.
So I think this will be a very interesting series, right? Like, I'm expecting this to go. I'm going to say this right now. If Florida has a chance, they got to go 7 games. I think if it's a shorter series, Carolina will take it. I think the Panthers' best chance are to make series long because of the way they play.
Right.
But when we talk about that a bit more, Dan, you seem to think the Panthers are going to win this series pretty easily. So what do they need to do to make you correct?
They gotta use that veteran presence that they have. You gotta get Carolina's physical, but Florida's physical of an exclamation mark. And they gotta continue that. Look how they beat up Chris Tanev. Maybe you gotta do that to Jeremy Swayman, or Jacob Swayman, or whatever his name is.
Jacob Swayman, not Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, he's good dude. Jacob Swayman. Yeah, okay. So you gotta beat him up. The other thing too is Carolina's forward groups, as talented as they are, they're pretty small. Like, you look at Seth Jarvis, he looked like the junior 18-year-old kid on that Four Nations Team Canada team. Like, what is he, 5'7" at the most?
He's
like very, very small players versus the Florida. You got Kachuk, you got Bachhoff, you got Weinhardt, They're bigger guys. You got to use your size as an advantage. And Swayman and Brett Burns and Gostishev are really good defensemen in Carolina. But I think Florida's defense is better as a unit with Aaron Ekblad, Seth Jones. I can't think of the top of my head the other ones. But they got a really, really good D-line. And Anderson hasn't really played all year, so he's been well rested. But now that he's played quite a few games, we might see him get a little uneasy.
He's played 9 games. That's not.
Yeah, he only played 20 all season, right? So he's already almost halfway through his workload.
And you're halfway through the playoffs.
True. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
If anything, I think Bobrovsky's had the harder workload because Florida, say what you want about Toronto, they took them to 7.
Oh, I agree with you.
7-game series wears you down.
I agree, but you can never count off playoff Bob. I mean, Bob's a legend, right? And Anderson's playing very well.
Bobrovsky!
But my gut's just telling me Florida. I want to be wrong. I would love to see Carolina set up all the haters and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals at this point, and especially screw you to Anthony. I think what he did to the fans and to the city was disgraceful as a professional athlete and downright terrible. Mm-hmm. So I would love to be wrong and say Carolina wins this series, but my gut is telling me Florida.
And I'm going to tell you why Carolina's going. I'm going to tell you why Carolina's going to win this series, and then we'll go into game 1.
Like what Chazzy says, imagine it.
Carolina will win this series because they are deeper than Florida. They have 4 lines that can score. Florida has 4 lines that could be, and as much I'm going to say it, 4 lines that could be the backup goalie. They're not going to face a backup goalie in this series. Ooh. They're going to face Frederik Andersen, who was looking like the Frederik Andersen of many years ago. Everyone blamed him in Toronto. In Toronto, he was facing an average of 30 shots a game. In Carolina, he's facing under 20. Carolina is a team that dominates and owns the puck possession. Florida can't get their game going if they don't have the puck to play with. That's how Carolina will win this series, and I think you're not going to see Florida dominate physically because I think it just amps up Carolina even more if you try to play them hard. I think if you take a run at Frederik Andersen, I think Carolina will go beat the crap out of you, unlike what Toronto did. And as much as we said Toronto can't do that because that's not their game, that is Carolina's game. Carolina matches up really well against Florida, actually, when you look at these rosters. And that's how I think it's going to happen. But what the hell should we talk about? We need to get on our cell phones to get on the Streakers app.
Hopefully it doesn't happen, but imagine Dallas, Carolina finals.
I know, that's what I keep thinking. It would be crazy.
Funniest thing if that would happen, and then Carolina smokes Dallas in 4 or 5. I don't think that would happen either. But if it did, that'd be the funniest thing ever. Rantanen gets 0 points the whole series. But
let's need you.
Let's dive into the Streakers app. Make sure you download that app. If you haven't downloaded the app, why? It's free. It's fun. It's easy. It has sports in it. My name is literally in the app, Jacob Moore Sports Analyst. We have our own sports booth. You could become Dan Moore for a day if you download the app. Dan will shadow you and teach you his way of life. Right, Dan?
If you say so.
So, who's going to win game 1? The game number 1 of the series, which is in Carolina. Carolina has home ice advantage. They had 1 more point than Florida in the regular season. Chazzy, I'm going to start with you since you didn't get to talk much about that series. And who wins game 1? Carolina or Florida?
I'm going to give the edge to Carolina just because of the short layoff and Florida coming off the game 7. We'll see if they can bounce, but I just think Carolina is still hype and they'll come out flying.
Yeah, that short layoff is a big controversy thing that's been talked about, I think, until the horse is dead on broadcast.
Yeah, but back in the day, if you went 7 games, you were anticipating you're getting a night off and you're starting the next series.
I don't see it as it's that big of a deal. They're off today. Get over it. You're being paid millions of dollars. Go eat some bananas. Lane, what are you thinking here?
Same.
Do you think Florida's going to eat enough bananas, or do you think Carolina's going to take a 1-0 series lead at home?
I think Carolina's going to take the 1 series. I think they're going to take advantage of their home ice advantage. Yeah, I think Carolina's going to come out flying. They Like you said, we've said everything about how they got something to prove here. They're going to have a great crowd. We know the crowd in Carolina gets more rowdy as it gets on. They really like to feed into that. We're the bunch of jerks, like you said. They love that kind of like, come hate us, let's be the enemy here. It's going to be a rocking barn there in Raleigh, North Carolina. I think they got this. I think they're going to win game 1.
More for your money. The man that makes sure everyone's wallets are as big as a Big Mac.
With cash, not receipts.
Who wins game 1? Florida or Carolina?
I disagree with Chazzy's results, but I agree with his reasoning. I think Florida's going to win game 1 because I think Florida has all the momentum coming straight from a game 7. I think Carolina has been sitting for a few days doing whatever, going to be sloppy loosey, and Florida's going to be amped up and be like, hey, what? We just beat off Toronto 6-1. We just ended Mitch Marner's career. We just got him booed off the ice. Let's do the same with Carolina. Let's go.
So I'm the tiebreaker here.
Ooh.
And I'm going to go a little off the board. Carolina will win the series. The Florida Panthers will win game 1.
Whoa.
Wow.
What the Florida Panthers are going to do is I think Carolina has been sitting and watching, drinking margaritas and having a nice time. And I do think Carolina may come out a little flat in game 1, and Florida will have a very hot start. Once Florida gets in front, it's very hard to catch back up. I think Florida wins game 1. I still say, like still Dre, Carolina wins the series. But let's get into my custom props. You know this ain't a Streakers app without a custom prop. Will the Carolina Hurricanes get 9 shots within the first 10 minutes? I say yes. Lane says no way, Jose. Chazzy says no way, Jose. Dan, okay, well, screw you guys. I'm the Super Fan Sports Analyst. Dan, this prop is for you. Will the Florida Panthers throw 47 hits in this game?
Oh, yeah.
That was aggressive.
47 in
40,
one game?
100%. They're like 450.
Lane, this prop is for you. Will Steady Freddy need to make at least 23 saves?
Yes.
You think Florida's going to get more shots on net than we've seen any other team get against Carolina?
I do think they'll get a little bit more. Yes, I think they are. Like you said, they are a little bit. They are more skilled than Washington. They're more skilled than New Jersey. They do have a lot of weapons. They can use their body to get the puck back. I do think they will get. I don't think they're going to get like 30 shots, but I could see them getting around like 22, 23, and I could see Freddie having to make some big saves. Like Freddie's going to have to be huge because this is going to be a way harder team than what they face. No matter what, they have had the easier opponents. Florida is definitely a harder opponent in front of them, but I think if Freddie can make like 20, 23 saves, I think he's going to have to, and I think he will do it.
So I want to move on now to the Winnipeg Jets, back to our WTF segment of the program. And Mr. Chazzy, I'm going to let you go first here. Congratulations, it's a boy. Actually, you have a daughter, but that's okay. What happened to Winnipeg? They won the President's Trophy. It seemed like they were on the path. They had home ice against Dallas. They are a dominant team at home, yet they still lost this series. So what went wrong?
It's a great question.
I know it is.
I really don't know. I think it's when your starting goalie gets yanked twice on the road. Did they really try to recover? Then you score that big goal with 1.6. You have the momentum going into the next round, and then what, they lose game 1? They lost game 1?
They lost game 1.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just a roller coaster of you just couldn't grab that momentum and put a consistent couple matches together because they had one good match. Hellebuyck shutout, blown out, shutout, and then you lose. So I guess you just couldn't get consistent play. I guess and injuries.
Now, Dan, when you bring up comparable to Joseph Woll, I think a big issue was he actually was comparable to Joseph Woll, but he was being paid $8.5 million a year. Right? He's paid to be a franchise goalie, and Hellebuyck has only won 1 game on the road since 2023 in the playoffs, right? And I think that was a huge issue. But, Chazzy, I want to jump on your point about game 1. When they lost game 1, we came on the post-game show, and I said this could be killer for them in this series. And people in the comments like, oh, Jacob Moore, self-proclaimed sports analyst. You're saying this too early. It's still a young series. Well, if you win that game at home, you have a game 7, and a game 7 in Winnipeg is a game that I think the Jets win. That was the killer for me. So, Lane, I want to ask you, where do they go from here? Do you let Nikolai Ehlers walk? Do you try to convince Connor Hellebuyck to waive his no move? Or do you fire the coach? Or do you just run it back?
It's definitely a harder, like you said, we talked about this in the past, but it definitely is a harder path for the Winnipeg Jets, because what do? You're in the kind of the same boat as the Leafs, where you can almost look at it the same way, where have they gotten in the playoffs and kind of the playoff failures over the last little bit. And what do they do? I think they need a new coach, though, because I think at the end of the day, they do have a star goalie. And we saw in the playoffs here that they were not able to get their Vezina caliber goalie to play certain good games on the road. And I think that comes down to coaching. Or maybe you look at this Kevin Cheveldayoff. I really don't think he deserves to come back either, because they kind of stood pat at the trade deadline. They left themselves with $1.4 million. They didn't try to get creative with draft picks or, trying to retain salary, trying to bring in some guy that can maybe fix it. They just they knew those issues going into it, and they just said, well, if it happens, it happens. Well, at the end of the day, it happened. So, I look at the management of the way the Winnipeg Jets handled it in the playoffs. I really think it's poor management at the end of the day, and they kind of set the team up for a failure that the team almost got them out of it themselves just by playing well. Unfortunately, the whole Mark Scheifele situation was unfortunate with his dad passing away, getting a penalty, and the kick goal. There were some things that went their way that didn't go their way, but at the end of the day, you can look at all these little things, but you got to win the games at home. And when you lose one game at home, it sets you off on a bad precedent that these little things that get in the series, these little breaks that don't go your way, it ends up becoming a hill that sometimes you can't climb out of. And unfortunately, Connor Hellebuyck wasn't as effective on the road as he needed to be. So it's like you said, it's going to be really hard to see where they go, how they get themselves out of it. But I think it's got to start with the management first. Get some new management, get a new manager, maybe bring in a new coach, and then let them take over and see what they think they need to do for the roster upcoming next season.
And, I kind of want to bring a point to Dan, and Dan always criticizes me for not blaming the goaltender. And a lot of time it's not the goalie's fault. Yes, Dan, I know I should become an agent for all goalies in the National Hockey League. Sure, I'll be an agent for all goalies in the National Lacrosse League as well. But, Dan, you always brought up that Connor Hellebuyck was not a big-time goalie, and I always said you were crazy. This is the first time that I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I want to give you a round of applause.
Yay. Thank you, everyone.
Wow.
I call this since day one. And so I don't hate old goalies. I love Bobrovsky, for example. But Connor Hellebuyck, I was never sold on.
You need to disinfect him out of that locker room.
Yeah,
would you move him, Dan? Like, are you doing whatever it takes? Or are you just going to lay it on the line with him?
I would love to move Connor. I would love to move Connor Hellebuyck, but my $1 million question is, what teams are going to be stupid enough to take him?
A lot of teams.
Chiefs?
There is probably half the league. Like, you know what? Perfect example. Hello, Mr. Chazzy. Would you like Connor Hellebuyck on the Montreal Canadiens?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And there are a lot of teams that want him. But the bigger question is, will Hellebuyck waive his no move?
I don't know, but what I would do is I would do whatever I can to make him move it. And with that money, I would bring Ehlers back, because I think Ehlers was one of the best players for Winnipeg. And I think you could get him for about $7 million or $7.5 million, and he would be one of the great value contracts in the league. I know he was injured during the season, but in the playoffs when he played, he was phenomenal. I've been comparing him with Nylander his whole career. He was drafted one spot below William Nylander, and you can see how comparable those two players are. Yeah, Nylander's a little bit better, but I think Ehlers have had more injuries and stuff like that. And with, the other thing too is I agree with Lane that Shoutout has to go. Because if you're a buying team, why are you leaving cap space going into the playoffs? It makes no sense to me. And I'm giving so many deaf guys that Winnipeg got, I'm letting them walk. I'm letting Brandon Tanev walk $3.5 million, for example. And with some of that money left over, I am getting a second line center like John Tavares. Well, around $8 million to go behind Mark Scheifele, because I didn't realize how bad Winnipeg was at center until Mark Scheifele was injured at one game. Like, holy cow, they got nobody. And you really saw that in the series. Once guys like Mark Scheifele was injured, once Josh Morrissey was injured, once Hellebuyck had a bad game, the team couldn't recover.
So the interesting thing about Nikolai Ehlers, and reading here a little bit, they're comparing Ehlers' contract to around Tavares, anywhere from that like high 6s to low 8s. And I will say this, if you're Winnipeg, as much as I think Winnipeg needs a change, and it's tough, he's your biggest UFA that you're able to change, I bring him back, even if that means I'm letting a guy like Velarde walk, although he's a restricted free agent. You know, maybe you're trading his rights away to clear up the cap space, and you're not standing back Brandon Tanev. Right there at 3.5 and 3.4, that's almost $7 million in cap space. Mr. Calculator is going to correct me, I'm sure, but that's roughly $7 million in cap space. So with that $7 million in cap space, that is another roster player that maybe just adds a little bit of depth scoring. Maybe you can get John Tavares for $7 million.
Ferrari's tough to move.
Maybe you can get Brock Nelson for $7 million. But Dan, go ahead.
Ferrari's tough to move because he's a young talent, restricted free agent. But I don't remember how he did in the playoffs. I don't think he did all that much, to be honest. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't believe he did either. I'm going to look up his stats. But all I'm saying is, if you're
that's literally what I'm doing.
If you're looking to find a way to make changes while keeping Nikolai Ehlers, Velarde is a way to make the change. If you let Velarde, and I can't believe Brandon Tanev gets $3.5 million. Gabe Velarde had 4 points in 9 games and a +1.
Yeah.
Where in the regular season, he had 27 goals, 34 assists for 61 points.
Yeah, he had injuries as well.
He did, but, and you're right, Dan, he's only 25. He was a first-round draft pick by the LA Kings in 2017.
Yeah.
He's a guy that LA let go thinking that would solve their problem against the Oilers, and it sure as hell didn't. But I think it's just, if you're looking to add depth, you got to clear cap space to do it. And if you let Tanev and Velarde go, that gives you the cap space to improve your center. You're going to have to lose somewhere to improve the center because of the way you signed Scheifele and Hellebuyck long-term before you got into the playoffs. I'm not saying I'd move them, especially Scheifele. I would not move Mark Scheifele. No. And Mason Appleton's another one at $2.7 million.
I was going to say, that's the one I would give up. Instead of Velarde. I would keep Velarde and give up Appleton.
It depends, though. Velarde's going to want to raise from 3.4, right? He's going to be probably getting 5 or 6 in the open market.
I think he's getting more than that. I think he's getting 6.5. I think he's getting somewhere you money.
No way you're comparing him to Nikolai.
In an open market? Yeah, I think he's getting that kind of money because he's so young. He's doing it as a 25.
But it's okay. But you told me earlier that you don't think Matthew Nyes is worth 7, where Nyes puts up more points than Ehlers. I mean, more points than Velarde, and he's a tank. But you think Velarde is worth Ehlers' money?
No. I think they're worth close, not the exact same. I think Ehlers is worth about 7.25. I think Velarde's worth about 6.5. I think Nyes is worth 6.5. I don't think you can give Nyes more than Hyman at this point.
Yes, you can.
No, because
I think there's a very good chance again. If you don't give Nyes the money, someone will offer sheet him.
Fine, let him have him.
That would be really stupid.
This team lost.
He's not the reason. That's like saying Washington should trade Tom Wilson and Alexander Ovechkin because they lost in 5.
You might consider that at this point.
Jacob,
Number one, you can't.
This book. We need the circus book.
I don't know where to put it. Oh, here it is.
I think we need it at this point.
Matthew Nyes, you are signing, and if you got to pay him 8. Because you're signing him on a 3-year bridge deal, and if not, you're going to get someone else who's going to pay him 10 because you're paying him for the potential.
10?
I think he could get 10 to the right team that's desperate enough.
Like Utah?
Yeah, like Utah, or again, I'm going to say Chicago. Can you imagine Matty Nyes of Connor Bedard and Mitch Marner?
You're
Chicago Maple Leafs!
I mean, Edmonton's done it. Look how many former Leafs they have. They just kept getting former Leafs. It's funny enough, all the guys that end up providing big numbers.
Look at Kasperi Kapanen, huge goal for the Edmonton Oilers.
Connor Brown's been amazing. Zach Hyman.
But Chazzy and Lane, either one of you can chime in here. I'll let you decide. You be the judge of who talks. Are you agreeing with Dan on keeping Velarde and moving Tanev and Appleton to make room? Would you potentially let all three of those guys walk? Would you re-sign all of them, including Ehlers? Like, what are your moves here if you're Winnipeg? Because you have some options, just not as many as a team like Toronto.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not sure. I would try to keep Ehlers. I would definitely try to keep Ehlers. If there's one guy you want to keep, it's your 60-point winger that he's a first-line guy who was huge for you in the playoffs. I think you got to try to keep him, even if you only want 6 to 8. That's not really a lot. I feel like Velarde, you could I feel like Appleton and like Tanev. I feel like those are guys you can let go to maybe make room for maybe like a Brock Nelson or something like that, or maybe a Matt Duchene. I think Duchene would be a great player.
Actually, Duchene would be a great fit in Winnipeg.
If you want to
not think of that,
play top line if someone got hurt.
Yeah, great point.
Maybe even bring in a Patty Kane, or try to see if you can bring in Jonathan Toews, Patty Kane, get that dynamic duo for your fourth line. Maybe look at a Jack Allen instead of getting Eric Comrie, someone who you can believe in. We talked about that whole, maybe not playing Connor Hellebuck 65 games and running his energy into low. Maybe only playing him 50 or 49 games and giving, Jake Allen 32 games. So when it comes time for the playoffs, maybe Connor Hellebuck's a lot fresher and can make a good road game. So
now, mind you, I don't know why Winnipeg didn't play Comrie more. You look at his stats; they're quite good.
That's what I'm saying.
He put it better. Funny enough, he put up comparable numbers to Joe Wall. Right?
Yeah, coaching.
Yeah, that's where again it comes down to coaching. And I do want to say in Winnipeg, I'm not sure who their goalie coach is. Maybe he's the guy that's got to go.
Yeah,
bring in someone that can figure out the mental whatever's going on with Hellebuck. But Chazzy, I'm not going to let you get away without answering my question. I am like Pirate Pete getting ready to come after you. Walk the plank, Chazzy, or answer the question. What do you do if you're Winnipeg?
It's a great question.
I know it.
No, well, you're homegrown, right? So there's not too much you can do. Mm-hmm. You try and keep Ehlers. If you lose him, I guess you got to bring in a couple character guys. I don't know, but
yeah, I agree with you boys. Though keeping Nikolai Ehlers has got to be the number one goal for Winnipeg.
I'm shocked it hasn't been done yet.
I was surprised. I bet he's put off that they locked up Scheifele and Hellebuck long term, and they just said, "Nah, you can wait."
I would be if I was him.
I think he's a comparable player to that core.
I agree.
But let's move on to the Western final now between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. And oh boy, a rematch from last year. This should be good. You got two very hungry teams. You got Edmonton, who is not happy about the way the Cup Finals ended last year against Florida. You have Dallas, who sold everything to bring in Mikko Rantanen to try to get over the hump. This series has got to go 7. I'm going to start that off. I would be shocked unless Stuart Skinner falls apart again and Calvin Pickard's not ready to go. That is the only way I don't see this series going long. But, I mean, I think Skinner he seemed pretty solid the last series. Mm-hmm. I say Pickard's very close. But, Lane, I agree with you. It's you don't know with Stuart Skinner, do you?
He's unreliable. And I hate to say that he's like Game 7 Leafs, right? Like I said, you don't know what you're going to get. Stuart Skinner's the exact same. You don't know if he's going to be a 40-save shutout goalie or you're going to be trying to put in your backup in the first 5 minutes when you're 6-0 Dallas. You don't know what you're getting.
So in Game 1, you just can't because Calvin Pickard's not there. You're not going to throw some kid into the game and hope for the best.
Might have to, worst case.
So goaltending, I think, is the biggest question mark for Edmonton. For Dallas, you're very confident with
Otter. Yeah, and
I think the biggest difference is if Edmonton gives up as many goals as they have, Dallas is not the team that you can come back on a 3-4 goal deficit. They just
exactly.
But to flip that, Edmonton is more depth scoring than Dallas. Edmonton's got more guys in their bottom 6, and we've been seeing it in these playoffs. Bottom 6 scoring has been really important.
It always is.
Edmonton has more of it. You're getting guys like Connor Brown, looking at the Connor Brown from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're getting Kasperi Kapanen chipping in too.
Talk about someone's getting a pay raise, Connor Brown.
And you look at guys like Evander Kane and Corey Perry. I get they're on the top 6 lines, but like they're secondary players. There's going to be a hell of a series, but I do agree with both of you guys that Edmonton can't go down big early because Ottinger is a goalie that can make big saves in big moments.
Yep.
And that D core of Dallas is healthy again.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and Hiskinen in that last game against Winnipeg. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's like 2.0. He's so fast.
I did not realize how good he was because I hadn't watched him in so long. And my gosh, he can skate. It's literally like watching figure skating. Like it's just beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye.
And he can keep up with McDavid. He's a guy that's going to be able to keep up with Connor McDavid. You know, everyone talks about Connor McDavid and his speed. Miro Heiskanen is going to be able to keep up with them.
And you look too at Dallas, their defense is a very good mix of physical and skating.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have some big defensemen in that group, but you also have defensemen who can skate. Right? And I think that's going to be a big difference maker for Dallas in this series. Right? We look at the defensive core for the Stars, and you have some big boys on defense. Like Thomas Harley's having incredible playoff.
Awesome.
But then you also have guys like Lyubushkin and Ceci who are bigger defensemen. But then you also got a guy like Hickman, who's such a great skater. Right? They have a really good combination of offensive defensemen and defensive defensemen. My worry for Dallas is the depth. After Rantanen, it really tanks. Rantanen with 19 points, Hintz 10 in 13 games. Wyatt Johnson 8 in 13. He's your third best. Granlund with 7, and 3 of those points were in one game. Sam Steele, your third line center, with 6 points in 13 games. Sagan with 2 goals and 3 assists, 5 points in 13 games. Matt Duchene, 5 assists, no goals, -9 in 13 games.
Ouch.
Jamie Benn, your captain, 24 penalty minutes and only 3 points and a -6.
Ouch.
That's where I think Edmonton has the advantage, right? You got McDavid and Draisaitl, 16 points. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 9. Hyman, 8. Brown, 7. Perry, 7. Kane, 7. Podkolzin, 6. Henry, 4. Yeah, Podkolzin has 6 points and he's a +5. He's been very, very good.
Wow. Like that.
And you look at the defense, too. You got Evan Bouchard to 14 points. Darnell Nurse only has 4 points. He's only an even. He's been a bit of a disappointment. Klingberg, though, +5. He's been playing some really good defense. Wallman, your big move at the deadline, +13.
Yeah, it's amazing, eh?
All your defensemen in Edmonton are plus.
And you're forgetting one
Nurse who's just evened out. He's very mellow.
You're forgetting one very important piece. It says a good possibility that Ekholm could be playing this series, and Ekholm is the only defenseman that can probably keep up with Hickman in Dallas.
Yeah, and I mean, Matthias Ekholm is a phenomenal player. As Lane pointed out, he practiced on Monday.
Yep.
So he's close, right?
Yeah.
But do you guys agree with me when I say this series is probably going to go 7?
Yeah, because I don't think Edmonton is going to keep Rantanen off the score sheet forever. I think Rantanen is going to win a couple games in this series.
Lane either really needs to use the washroom or he isn't sure. So, Lane, do you need to pee or do you disagree?
I'm not sure it's going 7. I think this could be a – no, hear me out here.
Lane gets his first ever cloud book on the Strickers Island podcast. Congratulations, Lane Dashing.
There you go. No, here's what I think. It may not go 7. I could see one of these teams just taking over. I really could see, if Edmonton gets hot, Edmonton goes in there, maybe Stuart Skinner does a game, Connor McDavid and Draisaitl can be what they always be, that depth. I could see a team really take, kind of just going out the gate and maybe not looking back. You look at maybe Dallas gets hot early and Rantanen's too much for that Edmonton defense, and you're not worried about the depth, and Otter plays Skinner. I could see, I'm not saying it won't go 7, but I could see one of these teams maybe getting a good sprint out the gate and just being like, we're driven. We all want to win, and we're just going to keep going.
You know what, Lane? I never thought of it that way. You still deserve the clown book, but I get your point. Still deserve
I
the
think
top
Edmonton could go like win in 5 and just win 5 or 6, and maybe just Skinner comes out, maybe plays 2 good games, and McDavid and Draisaitl go crazy, and Dallas can't keep up with them.
Wow.
When you think about it like that, like it could happen.
So is that an epic fail for Dallas win after selling the farm against Wankman?
Yeah, my opinion, Dallas was a Stanley Cup final or bust team going in here. But so was Edmonton, right? Whoever loses this series fails.
So was Florida.
Whoever loses this series fails.
Yeah.
Chazzy, would you agree with me there? Whoever loses this series fails?
Absolutely. After last year, if you're Dallas, you obviously don't want to go anything less. This is a big what you guys retool for Dallas here. Because you got Brandon, I think some of your veterans are now unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents.
They have a lot of unrestricted free agents, which I mean, Jamie Benn should help a lot because he's not worth $9.5 million anymore. But you can see Sagan, Kane, Ben all gone at the end of this season.
I think Dallas is facing the same thing as you guys did with the Leafs last night.
Also,
I think they do not beat Edmonton, which I hope they don't beat Edmonton, but
so
they have a chance.
Let's talk game 1. I don't think we should give our predictions for the series just yet.
Oh, he did.
Well, Dan's okay. Screw it. We'll do series predictions first. I will say Oilers in 7. Dan, I don't remember what you said.
I'm agreeing with Jacob. Oilers in 7.
Lane, what are you saying?
I'm not sure yet. I need to see.
You don't have to give us an answer yet.
I'm not ready to put an answer on it yet. I almost want to see a game.
Are you a man of commitment? Are you willing to put an answer?
Who's got
Your
a
wife
home ice?
must be very happy to hear that. What's your prediction?
Dallas has
Edmonton. Who's got a home ice in this?
Dallas.
Oh, Dallas does?
Yeah.
Edmonton.
You're still saying Edmonton.
Yeah.
Okay, who wins game 1?
The cup.
Let's get into that Streakers app. Everyone get those cell phones that we know are glued to the hip. And who is winning game 1? The Dallas Stars or the Edmonton Oilers? Lane, let's start with you.
I'm going with the Dallas Stars. I'm going with Dallas. I think they're going to win. I think they like you said, they know they got to make it to the cup this year. Mikko Rantanen had a bit of a quieter series, but I think he's going to heat up knowing he's driven this year. He really wants to get to that cup to prove Colorado wrong. And man, if it's Carolina, Dallas, that'll be the funnest series ever. But no, I do think Rantanen's going to go. I think he's going to get back on his horse and start get going again. I think he's going to start putting the pucks in the net. And I think Ottinger will outplay Stuart Skinner. I think he's just a better goalie. I think Ottinger's going to make those big saves where maybe Aiden Hill couldn't. And I think Dallas has a really good chance on home ice to take the first game here.
Dan, let's go to you next. Who's winning game 1?
The question is with Rantanen, is he a half horse, half man? We'll find out soon. But I think Edmonton is going to win game 1 here. Edmonton got I don't remember who Edmonton faced. Isn't that terrible? Who did they face?
Vegas.
Yeah, Edmonton did it in 5. They got a little more west. That
True.
Winnipeg series was very high emotions. And I think of Edmonton, the injury at home, and Skinner being a little shaky and stuff, and Pickard being a little injured and stuff, I think the West is going to benefit Edmonton. So I think Edmonton's going to take game 1.
So, Chazzy, before I let you go, I'm going to go next. I'm like Kanye stealing the mic from you, like old Kanye, not new Kanye. But anyways, I am going to take Dallas in game 1 with Edmonton still winning the series. I think home ice advantage will be important early on. I think Dallas... I don't think either team's going to be tired or whatever because this game's not till Wednesday. So I think both teams are going to be well rested.
Oh, good point.
I agree with Lane here that I think Mikko Rantanen is going to kind of take over game 1. I could see Skinner having a little bit of an off night. And I think that Edmonton wins. But Chazzy, the Chaznator 4.0, you had another update. Congratulations. What do you see in game 1?
Edmonton stealing game 1.
Wow.
Now let's get into the custom props, because again, it ain't no streakers party unless you got your props. Connor McDavid, 2 points. Dan, yes or no?
Yes.
Lane?
I'm going, yeah. First game, I think he could do it.
Chaznator 4.0.
Yes.
Not giving you my answer on any of these props. You got to find out when you challenge me in the app. Now let's get into, I'm going to ask each one of you about a prop. Chazzy, will Stuart Skinner allow 3 goals or less?
Game 1?
In game 1. Not in the whole series. That'd be amazing if we only allowed 3 goals. In game 1.
No.
Edmonton's going to win a barn burner, according to Chazzy here.
Yeah.
Okay, Lane. Will Mikko Rantanen get at least 2 points?
I do think he will. I think it's going to be a Rantanen versus McDavid show. I think Mikko Rantanen's going to be a huge player in this series. He's going to be in his home barn. Like I said, I really think he's going to get back in the points. I don't think you're going to be able to hold him up. He's been so historic this playoffs. He's had a bit of a down series, but I think he gets back to putting up these monster points. So I'm going to say yes, he gets 2 points in game 1.
More for your money. Will the Ottinator 5.0, he has more updates than the Chazinator 4.0.
Wow.
He's on Windows, so Windows gets a lot of updates. Chazzy's got a Mac.
Okay.
Will Ottinger make at least 30 saves?
100%. I think Edmonton's going to get a whole bunch of shots on net there.
Lane is looking at you like he would look at the lunch lady when he asked for a hamburger and she gave him the mystery meat. But let's move on now to the NBA playoffs, which I love Dan's notes in this. No clue. But this is why we have the Chazinator 4.0 and Lane dashing dash code. So, boys, what's going on in the NBA playoffs?
I know the Raptors aren't in it.
I have one comment, and it's for the New York Knicks fans. Like, they are on cloud 9 right now, conference finals, going against Indiana. It's pretty special to see the Knicks fans get this treatment of victories here, and I don't know, on the doorstep of the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was not expecting them to beat the Celtics.
They're a dangerous team.
Yeah,
I really think they could do it. Like I think that ever since that Karl Anthony Towns trade, it looked silly when they did it, but now looking at how it's affected this team and how it's made this team look so dominant, especially in the playoffs, I could really see the Knicks pushing themselves to the finals. I think the Pacers are a good team. What they did against Cleveland was very surprising. So you obviously can't write them out. Tyrese Halliburton there, he's an assist machine, and that they're really gonna have to make sure he doesn't get going, because once Tyrese Halliburton gets going, it's gonna be a bad time for the New York Knicks. So I think controlling the assist there, I think Chazzy would agree with me. They got to take the ball out of his hands and make his night a living nightmare. And that's going to be big on Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart to do, is to make Tyrese Halliburton just have a miserable night, like that he really wants to go to the store and get a Gatorade because he had a really bad night. He's going to have to go to 7-Eleven and get one of those hot dogs after the game.
Well, yeah, you're right, because Indiana they don't miss. They shoot, but they don't miss.
Those hot dogs are, oh my God. Those hot
dogs are my real dogs.
Those hot dogs are terrible. I think this is even before I knew Chazzy. But my first auto show tour, I didn't know Chazzy yet. And in Montreal, my first city, I thought, well, I'm going to try saving my money and eat on a 7-Eleven diet.
Oh, no.
And it was terrible. So every time you say, well, 7-Eleven, $2.99 hot dogs, I'm like, ugh.
Okay, so
I'm into the West.
Enough of the hot dogs for my real dogs. But the question I have for you guys quickly then, was this a failure of a season for the Celtics and Cavaliers? Finished first 100%. And second. And Cavs lost in 5, Celtics lost in 6, and the Celtics last game was embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a failure for both teams. I mean, at least on Cleveland's end, you could argue, they had a lot of injuries going in. I'm not saying you can't. I know we're going to talk about injuries, but at the same time, but in NBA, I feel like the injuries are more prevalent. When you're missing a star player, we saw this with Golden State. We'll get into them in a minute. It's hard when you're missing a star player, and when you have 5 guys compared to 4 guys, and you're using bench guys that are not really playing all the time, trying to get those numbers on. Donovan Mitchell got hurt and Garland didn't come into the series late. So they were kind of like not off to a good start to go into. But the Boston Celtics, 100%, this is an epic failure on beyond Like they got to be embarrassed on how this ended. Like you had a healthy lineup, you had Jason Tatum, you had everything you needed. You had the championship team coming back, and you got destroyed. I don't know how Chazzy feels, but I think for the Celtics, it's beyond embarrassing. Celtics is a little bit not as bad, but for the Celtics, I would be on frustrated. I would be just as mad as a Celtics fan as I was last night as a Leafs fan.
Well, one question I don't know if we talked about it. Lane, was just the amount of blowouts we're seeing.
That's crazy.
And yesterday was Game 7, Nuggets OKC. I know OKC's dominant, but another 25-point blowout in the playoffs in a Game 7. Like, they're not even competitive.
It was 32 points.
32 the one lost.
Or it's 32 points. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I want to ask you guys then, how surprised are you to see the Timberwolves in the Western Final?
We're in the realm of the Edwards era.
Yeah. He's going to be.
We don't mention Jordan anymore or LeBron. We mention Edwards.
It's going to be SGA versus Edwards, and we're going to see and this is the one thing. Eventually, SGA, I got to give him some credit. Everyone said he was a bit of a playoff choker, but he really came up big there in Game 6 and Game 7s. He was another guy that was looked at as kind of a when it comes big, he's kind of a choker, but he really brought it home for the Oklahoma City Thunder there towards those last games, really putting up some big points. And it's going to be interesting to see who really takes it here. Is it going to be Anthony Edwards, who's been on a dominant run? But I also look at him, and sometimes he's a bit of a flippy-floppy guy, like Dan likes to flip-flop. Sometimes he has a
shots fired at more for your money.
No, I love Dan. Dan knows I love him. But no, I'm just kidding.
I love you too. No homo.
No, but Chazzy knows what I'm saying. Like sometimes, Anthony Edwards can come out and get 40 points, and the next game he gets 8. Like sometimes you don't know what Anthony Edwards is going to show up in. I really feel he's going to have to be more consistent here because SGA is someone who is very consistent. He usually gets around 20, 30 points. He usually shinks about 2 or 3 threes every night. I think he's more consistent on the stat line. I think Anthony Edwards is going to have to be a little bit more consistent and help the Timberwolves because we all know the OKC are not going to be an easy team to walk over at all.
No. And if we do get to see it, let's not forget about the Minnesota Knicks trade where you trade Cat one way, Randall the other. Now you're in the Final Four.
It'd be crazy.
And then my second point is in this Knicks Indiana, look at your former Raptors, how big of plays they've been making for their team down this stretch with Siakam, and then you got OG on the other side.
Yes,
it sounds like you're going to have an interesting NBA conference finals.
Should be good.
Yeah,
I think it's time we move on to the Canadian Football League. As you know, we are in Canada. We like big balls here in Canada. We talk about hot dogs for Oreo dogs, big balls for the Canadians, and we saw the first game of the preseason between the Calgary Stampeders and the BC Lions. I want to ask you, Dan, here, because you're more of the CFL fan, I think, between you and I than over Chazzy or Lane. And nothing against you two. You're both beautiful. Well, Lane is dashing. Chazzy, we should call you.
Fan, though.
We should call you the Riznator Chazzy. That doesn't make any sense. But anyways, Dan, are you surprised Nathan Rourke only threw one ball in this preseason game in Victoria, BC?
I'm surprised he threw a ball. We're probably too scared to see him throw the ball. It's just we're committed to this guy now, and we're screwed. So, yeah, I think you're going to see him more in the later preseason games when he has a full defensive line helping. Full offensive line helping him, and he has his full receivers to catch the balls because you do not want the fans to get a negative impression of him that early in the season. No way.
Yeah, because I will say BC did not play any of their starting receivers, which I get it's early in the preseason, but I mean, people are also coming out to Victoria to see these players play. I thought Chase Bryce, though, looked really solid. I know he's probably your third string, but 14 for 20, 135 and a touchdown, averaging 6.8 yards per throw. Jeremiah Masoli was only out for about a series and a half, but 3 for 5, 43 yards and a touchdown.
Masoli's going to be really tough because he hasn't played much football in past 3 years or so. So they're going to really ease him in even at the beginning, right? And it really comes down to how terrible York is. Because if York isn't too bad, you're going to ease him in at the beginning. But if York falls apart in the beginning, like I think he will, you won't have that luxury of wussing Masoli in. You'll have to play him right away. And he hasn't played a lot in 3 years. I think he can play very well. So that's why I think it's really important for BC that this first-string quarterback you're talking about, Jacob, played as well as he did, because there's a not guaranteeing it, but there's a possibility he could be playing some football this year.
Well, you know what? I think Nathan Rourke is a really big wild card for the BC Lions this year. And they have sold all out on him. I understand why they did. Canadian kid from the area, won the Canadian Most Outstanding Player in his first year as a full-time starter
in the NFL.
But then he went to the NFL and he really struggled. Then he came back to the CFL and he really struggled. So we don't know exactly which quarterback you're going to get from him. And as the Chaznator 4.0 is very excited about, sorry, Chaz, you haven't got that update yet. Vernon Adams Jr. is your starting quarterback. But you have a question, Chazzy. You put your hand up like a very polite
I'm glad that's probably a leadway into the question I had for you. Is as we put the microscope on the Stampeders this year, that's who I'm going to follow in the first full season of the CFL here.
Because you have the cowboy hat now.
What are your thoughts in the depth? Yeah, I'll start wearing the cowboy hat again. What's your thoughts on the depth at that QB position for the Stampeders behind Vernon Adams Jr.?
That is a great question, Chazzy. I'm uneasy about the depth. I mean, you have arguably the best starting quarterback in the CFL. Because I think you can really argue, and Dan, you're going to get mad at me, but going into the season, you're expecting Nathan Rourke to perform like the way he did a couple years ago. Yeah. So you have Nathan Rourke, VA, Kelly, and Caleros as kind of your tier 1 QBs.
Franchise quarterbacks.
Your franchise quarterbacks, however you want to call it. The backup position in Calgary, you have Philip Walker Jr., who has not played. This was his first game action he had since 2023, over 500 days. Now, he does have NFL action, right? Where in his NFL career, he threw 6 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. So he did not have a great NFL career, but he has played professional football. In this preseason game, there was times he was scrambling around in the pocket a lot, but I mean, you know what? I thought considering he hadn't played in 2 years, I thought he looked okay. Logan Bonner, I honestly don't understand why he's still in this system in Calgary. I mean, his first game in the CFL, he threw, I think it was 6 interceptions. He only threw 1 interception in this game. Honestly, could have been 3 or 4.
Wow.
And he only threw 5 passes.
So sorry, go ahead.
He did not look great, and I don't know enough about Josh Love to have an opinion.
So for a quarterback going from the NFL to the CFL, besides the size of the footballs, what are the biggest transitions that they're seeing?
Well, you got more players. You got more players on the field. Your receivers get a running start before you snap the ball. The field is wider. There are more. They blitz 38% more in the CFL than they do in the NFL. So quarterbacks are under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat really quickly. Because of that big field, with how wide it is, you better get zip on it if you're trying to throw from the far side of the hash marks to the far side of the field, because that ball might have to go 25 yards to make a 5-yard completion, right? So that's the big – those are just some of the adjustments.
So your wide receivers are in motion. Yeah. Is that easier? Is that easier? Is your timing easier to hit them on their routes, or is it harder?
It depends. If you've been doing it your whole life, it's second nature. But if you're not used to it, it can be a huge adjustment period. It's why a lot of NFL players, when they come to the CFL, they don't have success right away, because the game is drastically different.
Go ahead, Dan. You forgot about the biggest difference, Jacob, is that this NFL has 4 downs. The CFL only has 3 downs. So you got to get more yards per carry, and you're not utilizing, usually, unless you have the Gene Carey from the Argos, you're usually not using your running game as much as you would in the NFL because of that.
That is true, because you know what you need? I would say a minimum 4.5 to 7 yards per play.
Right.
In the CFL, you don't want to be getting into second and longs all the time, because that's not a setup for success. Right. Now, my big question for Calgary is, Why have you not gone out and picked up a Jake Delagala or a Shea Patterson, 2 players who were just cut recently?
I'm shocked that they haven't.
More experienced backup quarterbacks. Shea Patterson did start in 6 games last year for the Rough Riders. Okay, he only won 2 of them, but I don't feel he was the main reason why they were losing. And same with Jake Delagala 2 years ago, again, with the Rough Riders.
Why not just bring Jake Mayer back? I know he was a terrible...
Jake Mayer is in Saskatchewan. He is the backup to Trevor Harris. I think they are going to hopefully mold to become the starter once Harris retires.
I guess so, yeah.
And Jake Mayer is being too expensive when you're paying VA to be one of the highest paid QBs in the league. But
so
I'm concerned for Calgary's quarterback depth right now.
So we see a trend in the NFL where some of these teams are playing analytics and you're going on 4th down. Are a lot of CFL teams using that 3rd down for a run or a pass? Like, are they?
Okay, so number one, here's another big difference, and this is a big position Calgary lost. You are using a short yardage specialist quarterback in the CFL. This guy's job is when it's 1 yard to 2 yards max, he's going to have a play to get you the first down. They used to have Tommy Stevens doing this, who was the best short yardage quarterback in the CFL, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%.
I would average over 3 yards a carry as a quarterback by literally just plowing people over. Picture a fullback who can throw, and that was Tommy Stevens. He is now a Rough Rider, I believe. So there's been so much movement in free agency. So will Calgary Calgary in the preseason game today? We're going the route of using a running back in the short yardage position where the running back takes the snap directly.
Oh boy.
Remember, that's what BC did last year. It's also what Hamilton did last year. And Hamilton did it last year with a lot of success.
True.
As I'm sure Dashing Lane Dashko was very happy to see a lot of success there from the Tiger Cats.
Sorry, direct snap to the running back on the 3rd down?
Yes, and he won't be in shotgun like a wildcat formation you'll see in NCAA. He'll be right up the center's butt, ready to grab that ball and go. Whether he's going left, right, or straight through the middle, or if you get a running back that can throw a ball a little bit, you will see some misdirection plays. Toronto, back when Chad Kelly was the short yardage quarterback, you'd see it where he'd fake the short yardage and have their fastest receiver on a go route.
Right.
And then he'd just yeet the ball 20 yards. Yeah. Right? So, but that's just my concern for Calgary. I actually thought for running back, Tyrone Evans had played very well. 11 carries, 44 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry. That's not bad. Wow, and he was out there in the beginning of the game, so that's against BC's tougher defensive opponents. Calgary did win this game 26-16, and they were leading 10-6 going into halftime. BC, however, I do see a little bit of issues here. I thought a lot of their receivers, besides of Jeremiah Jackson, struggled. We saw some drop passes that shouldn't be dropped. We saw some routes not being ran quick enough. But again, these are guys that will probably not be in your lineup. But again,
it's
maybe
the first game in the preseason.
Though it is so hard to judge right now. I'm just a little. I'm harping more on Calgary because I think the quarterback position in Calgary has been the biggest story going into this season. You have arguably the best starter in the league, but you don't have any depth.
Right.
And that's scary because when you get injuries, we all know football brings a lot of injuries, and if you don't have that depth at quarterback, I remember even when the Ticats didn't even have it. When same thing with the Ticats, when Bo Levi Mitchell goes out, they're kind of in trouble, right? Football is such a big sport. You can't, you gotta count for those injuries to happen to quarterbacks, and quarterback's such an essential position that, if you don't have that piece, if Vernon Adams unfortunately suffers a bad injury, you don't have anything to replace him, you might be looking at a bad start to your season. And if you don't get him back till later, then you're trying to scramble, trying to get a trade in. Not everyone's you all know in trades, not every team's willing to help you out as well. So
in the CFL, you don't see nearly as many trades as you do in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And VA, unfortunately, has had 2 hamstring injuries in the last 2 years. So, again, I'm not concerned about him being your starter, but I think you got to be calling Shea Patterson. Honestly, I would call Shea Patterson. Mm-hmm. He could be your backup quarterback, and he can be your short yardage guy. He was your short yardage guy in Saskatchewan. He'll get hot dogs for his real dogs. and he will find a way to be an impact player. So watch for that one. That is a Jacob Moore, sports analyst, stamp of approval move for the Calgary Stampeders. Dan and I were at the Toronto Argonauts blue on blue game, which is a game where it's just basically defense versus offense. They run different scenarios. The Toronto Argonauts did this for free on Monday afternoon at their Guelph training camp. And Chad Kelly is still not taking real-time reps. For anyone who doesn't know, his ankle basically got ripped off his leg. That is not good. You want it all attached. It's very
exactly.
He is walking, and he has a 50-50 chance for game one. I'm going to keep it a buck here. I don't think he plays game one.
No, I wouldn't. Just to be safe.
Unlike Calgary, Toronto has a lot of depth at quarterback. You have 3 quarterbacks who won more than one game last year for Toronto. You have Chad Kelly, Nick Arbuckle, and Cameron Dukes. Dan, I want to ask you here out of Dukes and Arbuckle, because no disrespect to Tucker Horn, who was out there as well, taking reps as well. But I think game one, it's either going to Kelly, Arbuckle, or Dukes. If Kelly can't go, it's either Arbuckle or Dukes. Yes, it's early in training camp. I'm going to ask you this question right now. Who do you think looked better in the double blue day?
I gotta say, that Tucker looked very good. He's
I was surprised.
He's a rookie. I was genuinely surprised. He looked really good throwing the ball there. But no question, no disrespect to Dukes, but no questions. I actually gotta give it to Arbuckle. He just won you the Grey Cup. He just won the most outstanding player, and most people had his career written off. So you gotta give it to Arbuckle. I also thought Arbuckle, he looked like the Grey Cup champion out there. He was bombing balls like crazy. He was quick in the pocket. He looked like he didn't miss a beat. He looked very, very confident. And I remember I've been Argos fans, Jacob knows, for a very long time. And a few years ago, we had Arbuckle as our starting quarterback.
We did.
Then something happened called COVID. And during COVID, we got Bethel Thompson instead, and Chad Kelly became the phenom that he is. So we let Arbuckle go. But that's the thing of Arbuckle. He was almost a starting quarterback a few years ago. So he's a very good quarterback. I think if the CFL did have a 10-team league or more teams, he would have a starting job, no problem. I think the Argos are extremely lucky to have him as a backup, and because you have him and because you have Tucker, the Argos, I know you said, Jacob, the Argos don't make, like, CFL doesn't make many trades, but the Argos and Stampeders have a history of making trades, from trading, I have trouble with that name,
Just say Flo.
Flo, thank you. Flo to Calgary for Judds. I can see Calgary calling up the Argos and say, hey, what do we need to give you to get Cameron Dukes? Because I think Cameron Dukes can be a very good backup for VA. He's a cheap salary, and he had over a 500 record last year when Kelly was injured, and he weren't too confident in Arbuckle at that point. So I would say I'm Toronto. He also lost to Resna, so I would bring someone else on defensive line. I would trade Cameron Dukes to a good defensive line. I don't know who Calgary has up on the head defensive line, but I would trade Dukes to Calgary for a defensive line to Toronto.
I'm not trading Cameron Dukes, but Dan, I do see Cameron Dukes last year, had 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he was 3-2 as a starter.
Yeah, great quarterback. But I'm saying you have Arbuckle, you don't need him.
No, Arbuckle, I agree with you, Dan. Arbuckle is my game one starter. If I'm Toronto, though, I'm not moving on from Dukes because I think there's no harm in having depth in that position. The only way I would potentially move him is if a team like Saskatchewan was willing to give you Tommy Stevens for the short yardage position. I don't see that happening. So Toronto is sticking with the quarterbacks they have. I do want to say, though, I thought the quarterback team as a unit, both sides are making plays on the ball.
Yep.
We didn't see any of the start. We didn't see any of Carey or Brown in the running back position. But Devontae McMahon is reminding everyone why, he might be the number 3 running back on a lot of people's depth charts, but he should be the number 1 running back in all your hearts. Because, man, this guy's got wheels.
Oh,
and
yeah.
CFL with a bigger field, having wheels is so important. But you might be saying, Jacob Moore, self-proclaimed sports analyst, Dan Moore, more for your money, Lane Dashing Dashko, Chazzy 4.0 update pending. What about the rest of the teams in the CFL? We will have a CFL season preview. So don't worry. We will have that preview show, and to make it even better, we'll be doing that show live. That's right, live.
Oh, that's news.
So you will be able. Oh, I did tell you that. You must have. You were probably asleep after you watched the Leafs lose.
So remember we lost, bud.
But just remember that we will be doing a CFL preview show. But let's move on now to the London Knights. Dan, congratulations on being a very smart individual.
Yeah, I call it since day one. I say Ethan Cowan, after having such a terrible Team Canada, had to prove he was Maple Leaf worthy. And especially now with Marner walking and Tavares walking, there's a possibility there's a roster space for Easton Cowan next year.
No matter roster space, there's a chance there's a top 6 space for Easton Cowan.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so good on him.
How much of a chance do you see London winning the Memorial Cup?
Oh, 100%. No questions there.
They're going to have to shut down McKenna.
That's fine. The OHL is the best league.
Best player in the Canadian Hockey League.
That's fine. The OHL is the best league in the CHL. Let's just be real here. And the London Knights is the best team in that league. They have the biggest fan support. They got the huge arena. They got fans who travel all the country to support them. I get McKenna's the best player, but it's just one player. The Knights are a unit as we see them beat Chazzy's Oshawa. You know, Oshawa Generals went crazy on deadline, gave up 17 first-round draft picks, basically, to build a team to beat the London Knights, and they still lost because the London Knights is a unit. So they could easily take down the best player in the CHL and McKenna, and maybe, depending how bad it goes, McKenna's stock draft might go down, you know, if he plays really
McKenna's
bad.
not being drafted this year, but no, this kid's insane. And remember, too, you got to get through a team like the Moncton Wildcats, and you might be laughing at me when I say the Moncton Wildcats. This is a very good team.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a team that just took down the team in Quebec that I can't pronounce because I don't speak French. And they took them down in 6. This is a very good team.
Do Lane or Chazzy speak French?
Je ne suis parler français. No.
That's in Chazzy's 5th up. Oh, it's in his 4th update.
That's pending in the 5th.
But I mean, I do think this is going to be I think London's got a good chance, but I'm not going to say it's 100%.
Mm-hmm.
The Memorial Cup is in Quebec this year, so which means the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League will be able to send both teams that made it into the finals.
Right.
Because that's where the Memorial Cup is this year. Right. So we're going to see starting on the 22nd, which is very soon, actually. This week.
Exciting.
First game, London's first game is on the 24th, and they'll be taking on the Moncton Wildcats. So we're going to have to get Mr. Brypup to send us another vidya, and see what he thinks about this. But I don't know if Chazzy and the Dashinator 3.0, you're an update behind. Lane, I'm sorry. Do you guys think that London can get another Memorial Cup under their belt?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the rosters right here, just going over the team, and I think I kind of agree with what Dan's saying based on what you're saying. Like Gavin McKenna, he's going to be special, but we saw what the London Knights did, and they're a really special team, and I feel like Easton Cowan is really trying to make a push to make this Leafs roster. He's someone who's going to really be pushing here to show that he's playoff potential and that he's got that fight and that dog and that maybe that thing. You know what I mean? So,
get that dog in him.
I mean, I don't know a lot about the CHL, but based on what I've seen up the roster and what I've seen from the London Knights, they look like a really strong team. It's pretty impressive what they did in their finals there. So I could definitely see them being a top contender to win the Memorial Cup for sure. Very true.
The Memorial Cup is one of my favorite tournaments to watch, so I'm going to keep it a buck. It is one of these, you're seeing the best of these young studs. And Chazzy, you've talked a little bit about the transfer portal between the NCAA and the CHL. Do you think the Memorial Cup's just going to keep getting more and more intense as that portal opens up starting next year?
No, the competition and the intensity are just going to get even bigger. So bigger moments.
Now, when you say intensity, do the Blue Jays just lack intensity? Let's go over to baseball here. and the Jays lost again.
Well, we don't know if Chassie's staying in London going with London or not.
Well, they
Sure.
have a chance. They could they definitely have the goaltending. And like you guys said, they got some scoring, so they got a shot.
I had such a good transition. And Dan's just like, screw your transition and your chicken strips. We actually had chicken wings today. But we're not sponsored by Montana's, although we had half-price wings at Montana's on Mondays. But Montana's, if you're watching the Streakers Island podcast only on Streakers Island platforms and you want to sponsor us, go right ahead.
That's
Love
right.
you. Let's talk Blue Jays because I don't have a segue because Dan stole it. How are we feeling right now, the Jays? They lost another series. Their run differentials are -28, third in their division for scoring, and the third most runs against in their division. Does this feel like last year? It does to me. It just feels like another team that has no killer instinct in Toronto. What a shocker.
But
I don't know if I'm just like sour because of the Leafs, but right now I have zero confidence in this Jays team to go on a run.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. Anthony Santander, he's a player I'm really disappointed in, and he had such an explosive season last year, and I know they tried to bring him in to be a big offensive piece for this team, but he is just struggling at all ends, and it's weird because usually when he plays in the Rogers Center, he usually has crazy games, but maybe it's better in small sample sizes because like this year, it's just not clicking, and I don't know, I look at the last 2 years for the Jays, and it's such it's almost just as frustrating as the Leafs, but for different reasons. The way they have tried to put this team together by attacking the two biggest free agents, knowing there's a 99% chance they weren't going to come to Toronto instead of actually. No, but I'm being serious. Like
I agree with you.
Instead of actually building it, like trying to get we talk about the Leafs getting 4 or 5 pieces. Instead of trying to go after Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani and putting all your eggs in a basket, they did this back-to-back years now, where you put all your eggs, you put all your negotiations, you wasted 2 weeks on it with fighting back and forth with Scott Boras and the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers and this. No, what you needed to do is say, okay, let's pick 4 or 5 guys that we realistically can get and build a stronger team instead of trying to bring in one guy. Because what happens? These one guys don't sign, and then the free agent list becomes very watered down, and now you're looking at guys like a Santander, who he was great on, don't get me wrong, but you could have got maybe 3 or 4 Santanders and really had a better lineup instead of focusing in on all one guy. And now you're looking at a second year in a row where your team can't get runs, your pitching has to do everything. Yeah. Excuse me, but it feels like just
like the Jays lane.
Choking on the Jays.
But it's like when they get the runs, they don't get the pitching. When they get the pitching, they don't get the runs. There's nothing in sync there. Like it's either one night they get good pitching, 7 innings and no runs, or they'll get 5 runs and the starting pitcher goes 3 innings. So there's no consistency in what they're doing right now on the field right now. And I don't know how that Shapiro and Atkins still have a job here. I think it's quite disgraceful for the fans that pay money to go to that arena to see the team.
It costs a lot of money to put a listing on Indeed. We're not sponsored by Indeed, by the way, but Indeed, give me a shout. 1-877 Cars for Kids.
That's my 2 cents on it.
Lane,
I'm surprised John Snyder still has a job.
That was at least worth 9 cents, by the way, which gets rounded to 10. So very good work. But more for your money. You have been the most confident Jays fan I have ever met this season. You have been preaching to the choir that they will get 98 wins. You have gone up on top of the mountains. And when the Blue Jays will win 98 games, do you still feel that way right now?
I'm with Lane. I'm a little sour because of the Maple Leafs, to be honest with you. I feel like it's another Toronto franchise that's just screwing up. I honestly thought I called it that we got the Gladdy deal done during the season, and I really thought that was $1 million. Well, it's just a $500 million thing that was going to change this team around. They invested the money in the Sky Dome. They brought it up to the 21st century, which was fantastic. They're proving to the players they want to put money into them. The fans are coming out supporting. I mean, the last home game, they had over 41,000 in attendance, which is great. And they just kind of fell apart again, I really I agree with Lane, too, that free agent what's his name?
Santander.
Hey, yeah, that guy. I think with him, he really should have stepped it up. I was excited when we made that signing. That's one reason why I thought they would hit 98 wins, because not just rely on Gladdy now. You got someone else hit a few dingers in and Springer and stuff. And I think the other really frustrating thing is Bull. We need more Bull. I say Bull wanted, obviously Bull wasn't going to get $500 million, but maybe he wanted $250 million, Maybe he wanted to play really well, and he's just been terrible. And it's frustrating because look at Jay's bullpen. I think they're playing better than what they were potentially slotted to play.
I agree.
I think they played very, very well. Can't blame him on that. And if it was up to me, I would have fired Schneider. I would have not even brought Schneider in at the beginning of the year. But now that you're in the exact same spot as last year, I would totally fire Snyder, because at this point, you're not even in the May yet. If you fire Snyder now, bring someone in knows how to coach a baseball team, and get someone to hit some ones, you have possibility with the weak division this year to jump up in the second or first in division and save the year. So, but we'll see.
Okay, so Chazzy, since you're not a Sour Leaf fan, are we just butthurt, or are you feeling the Jays feel like last year again and this team just doesn't have it?
Yeah, something needs to change in that clubhouse. It's just it's stale.
Maybe they need to repaint it.
Yeah,
it's hot stale.
It is stale. It's stale like the bread you get 50% off at Foodland.
It's like the Dollarama and 7-Eleven bread.
It's like they tried when they did that comeback, and then a couple games last week they had comeback wins, and then you gave up a grand slam in the ninth, and just can't get this part. So I think a big change has to happen. I think with Lane, the front office might need an overhaul. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now the Blue Jays do have some big games coming up, and they play the Padres next.
Oof.
Then they play the Padres, and then the Rays.
Cool.
So these are two big games. We got a big game on Tuesday night at 7:07, not 7:06, not 7:05, not 7:12, 7:07. Do the Blue Jays win this game? Download the Streakers app. Pick up your cell phone. Best app to use while on the toilet, by far. And who wins game one of the series? The Blue Jays or the Padres? That actually kind of rhymes. The Blue Jays or the Padres?
I got to go with the Padres here. I think they're just a better team. Fernando Tatis is having a really good season. Manny Machado, they have so many offensive weapons. Their pitching's not as great, but of course, that might not matter when the Jays can't score runs. I just don't think they're going to be able to outscore this Padres offense. There's a lot of weapons, and they really do hit well. You got like Xavier Bogaerts, you got Tatis, you got Manny Machado. These guys can hit dingers, and they're really good at cashing in runs when they get their opportunities. I don't think the Jays are going to stand a chance against this Padres offense.
Now, the Padres are coming off a tough 6-1 loss to Seattle, and I think they're going to be looking to get some revenge. And I don't know if, again, this is just me being fed up with Toronto sports teams, but I don't see the Jays winning this game. I think the Jays will end up losing this series. They might get swept. But, yeah, I'm calling it that they're not going to win this game. Chazzy, what do you think? The Chaznator 4.0 update pending.
Looks like it could be a pitching match here with Dylan versus Bassett. Both are straight. Dylan's got 58 and 47 innings, and Bassett's got 55 and 51. So it could be a pitching match coming from the West Coast. I'm going to give this to the Jays, game one. As much as I think the Padres are a stud team and they could go all the way this year, I'll give game one to the Jays.
So let's get into our custom props set.
What about me? I got an opinion?
I totally forgot to ask you. Dan.
Yeah.
Mr. More for your money.
Sorry.
Let me whisper to you. Who's going to win the game?
I agree with... Well, I'm thankful that I'm getting an opinion, but you didn't even have to give it to me, because I agree with Chazzy 100%. I think the Padres are a great team. I think they can win the whole thing. But like I said before, in order for the Jays to do well, they got to beat teams better than them. I think this team, they can win.
So let's get into the custom props. And remember, it's not a streakers party, it's a prop party. Mr. More for your money. I'm going to let you answer the first prop.
Hey.
It's Bassett pitching game 1. Will he get 88 pitches?
Yes.
I'm throwing in another prop that I did not put in the script, and I'm going to give it to Chazzy.
Ooh.
No time to prepare. The thing is, he got his 4th update, so I feel like his integration can handle
quicker.
For Bassett to get 88 pitches, do you think he can stretch that to 7 innings?
No.
Oh.
That was an aggressive. That 4th update is working great. Lane, Dashing, Dashco. Can the Jays score 4 runs in this game? You said the Padres pitching is inconsistent. No?
No, I think Dylan Cease, he's a really good pitcher. He's gonna be wheeling and dealing. I think it's gonna be a closer game, but I think the Jays are gonna have to get like 2 or 3 runs. Maybe they get 3. I don't think they get 4, and they're gonna have to rely on Bassett. But I could see this being like a 5-3 Padres game, or I don't think they're getting more than 3.
So I want to start off by saying this is the longest pre-taped episode of the Streakers On podcast, the Streakers On podcast history. So congratulations.
I was going to say that. I think it is.
We have done a very good job of going over 2 hours without wanting to strangle anyone. So good job.
Wow.
Dan, what is your island mindset after 2 hours? Because we need it. Like, I am almost wanting to ask Chazzy if he can make me milk.
Well, my mindset is a little different this time. Usually I say a quote to, give a positive example. This time it's a little different. We've been getting some comments on our social media, and I want to thank everyone for all the comments, because haters are going to hate. And if you got haters, it means you're doing something right. And the fact we got people commenting and watching us means we're doing something right. So thank you very much for that, and we look at all comments.
Well, on that bombshell, it's time to say goodnight. Thank you very much for watching the Streakers Island podcast. For more Streakers Island content, make sure you download the Streakers app, play along in our sports booth, plus watch out for our live shows on all the social media. I'm talking Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Be there or be square. Follow us.
More watches all your comments.
Dan literally will watch you while you're sleeping. He's like Santa Claus without the beard. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching.
I shaved the beard because the Leafs lost.
Thank you
Get on here
for watching the Streakers
With
on
no mirror.
There's no mirror, exactly. My mama said I could have cut myself. I'm like, hey, it was worth it when Leafs losing.
I'm Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. We got Babyface More for your money. Chazzy, the Chaznator 4.0, the CEO, and Lane, the dashing of them all, Lane Dashing Dashco.
Bye-bye.